In this video, I want to talk about why I am terrified about AI. I'm Sahil Bloom. I'm an investor, entrepreneur, and New York Times bestselling author. But to be completely honest, none of that has any bearing on what I'm about to say. What does have bearing is my 2009 Econ 101 class at Stanford. In that class, I learned about a man named Garrett Hardin, who in 1968 published an essay in which he described the perils of individual short-term thinking on shared resources. I'm going to quote from that essay. "Picture a pasture open to all. The rational herdsman concludes that the only sensible course for him to pursue is to add another animal to his herd, and another, and another. Each man is locked into a system that compels him to increase his herd without limit in a world that is limited. Ruin is the destination toward which all men rush, each pursuing his own best interest in a society that believes in the freedom of the commons. Freedom in a commons brings ruin to all." This is the so-called tragedy of the commons. It is the idea in which individuals acting in their own rational self-interest end up leading to the destruction of the shared commons. Now, what does this have anything to do with AI and the future that we're living in? I think quite a lot, because the commons that we're talking about in our case is society itself. And what we're looking at is a situation where this mental model from 1968 actually is a quite useful lens through which to consider the modern situation we're facing with AI. In this case, the commons that we're looking at is society itself, the social fabric that holds us all together, the markets, and even our sense of meaning, our sense of purpose, our sense in trust in other individuals that are all around us. So let's dive into this mental model, how it applies to the situation, and why it's making me so terrified for what the future looks like, not just for ourselves, but also for future generations, for our children, grandchildren, and beyond. There are basically four generalized actors in this modern commons, this modern tragedy of the commons, as I'll speak about it. Nations, builders, companies, and then individuals. Nations are the geopolitical entities. The United States and China are going to be the two that I speak about most. These are the global superpowers basically jockeying for long-term supremacy in this future of AI that's being created. Their goals are basically to get to the breakthrough technology before their main competitor. So get to AGI, artificial general intelligence, before the other one does. The US wants to get it before China, China wants to get it before the US, because whoever has it first, it stands to reason, is going to be the main global superpower. They're going to be able to dominate under a global hegemony. The prize for winning the battle that they are fighting is that global supremacy. Number two, the builders. These are the actual creators of the technologies that we're talking about. OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, Google, Microsoft, Meta, NVIDIA, the people that are actually building the technologies that are going to contribute to this AI future. Now, their goals are to build and develop the most transformative technology as fast as possible, and certainly before their main competitors do. Why? Because all of the profits are going to go to the first people who get there. It's market dominance, it's uncapped profits, it's global prestige, and for the founders of these businesses, it's a clear legacy, being the one who actually went and created this transformative thing that powers humanity into the future. Number three, the companies. These are companies that are starting to adopt these technologies to improve their overall business practices. At this point, it is quite difficult to imagine any modern company that isn't using AI tools in at least some portion of its workflows. My expectation is that the percentage of workflows that are being materially improved by the use of AI is going to eventually near 100%. We're kind of going to build probably slowly at first and then all at once towards that 100% mark. You're going to see AI adopted into the vast, vast majority of workflows over the next 1 to 2 decades, if not sooner. The goals of these companies that are adopting AI are pretty clear: grow revenue and improve profit margins. If they can do that, they're going to make more money for their shareholders, the executives are going to make more money, everything is going to look really, really good for them. And then finally, number four are the people. That's all of us. You listening to this video, me creating this video, the employees, the contractors, the creators, the freelancers, all the people in this global economy who are using these AI AI technologies to improve their individual workflows, their individual productive capacity. Now, all of our goals, those people, are to improve our productivity, to improve our standard of life, to improve our output, and obviously to improve the amount of money that we can make per unit of time or energy invested. The prize for doing that is pretty simple: more money and obviously job security, the ability to continue to provide a meaningful life for the people that we're taking care of. So now that we have a sense of who the actors are in this tragedy of the commons, as I talk about it, we can talk about how we actually destroy the commons. What plays out that leads to this tragedy that I'm talking about? Charlie Munger, the late investor, was famous for saying, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." That's really what we're talking about here. When you look at the incentives of each of those individual actors, what I see is a scenario playing out where everyone acts in their own rational self-interest, and that rational self-interested acting leads to the destruction of this shared commons of our society. The nations are going to seek to create conditions for their native builders, the companies that are actually in that country, to be able to get to AGI and these breakthrough technologies as fast as possible. That means they are going to be apprehensive about putting in any sort of regulation or things that would slow those native builders down. So the US in particular is not going to be fast to regulate any of these emerging builders, because why would it want to slow down its country's own progress in this massive geopolitical battle that is going to have long-lasting ramifications for how the entire world is set up? The builders are all going to be competing with one another for the flashiest launches, the best marketing campaigns. They're going to be competing over the eyes and the wallets of the consumers, who are these companies and the people that we're talking about. The technology industry has always embraced this move fast and break things mentality, but we've never really seen this play out when things potentially include society as a whole. Move fast and break things is a pretty scary prospect when you think about the fact that the thing could be society itself. So the next layer, companies. They are going to scale adoption of these technologies as fast as possible, even if it means enormous layoffs and even if it means enormous job disruption. It's going to come from the top down. Shareholders and executives are going to feel an enormous amount of pressure, and they're going to place that pressure down through the organization with mandates about the use of technology to improve workflows, improve efficiency. That's going to permeate down through leadership and managerial ranks, and productivity and efficiency will improve. But those improvements may come at the expense of a whole lot of workers and employees. And then finally, people, all of us. We're going to automate and optimize a whole lot of areas of our life. An increasing percentage of our life is going to be automated with AI, with these technologies. We all want some secret edge, the thing that's going to put us over the top, that's going to allow us to compete more effectively, to preserve our own jobs, to preserve our own meaning, our own creations, our own responsibilities. Those who work hard to stay on top and stay at the forefront of these new releases and new technologies are probably going to see dramatic improvements to their ability to earn and their ability to create. Those who don't are probably going to be at serious risk of having their jobs disrupted or destroyed. Those people are going to face meaningful financial struggle in the coming 5 to 10 years as a result of these shifts. Put all of this into a melting pot, and for me, there are 4 potentially terrifying implications that I've been thinking about. Number 1, companies are going to be growing, but they're going to need fewer employees to drive that growth. At first, that's going to be pretty subtle. Fewer job postings at the entry level and at the middle manager level. Then there are going to be small rounds of layoffs. Then there are going to be larger rounds of layoffs. Shareholders all along this are going to be thrilled because of the increasing profit margins and efficiency of the business. But you're going to see the unemployment rate rise in the overall economy, especially for knowledge workers over the next 5 or 10 years. What that means, if you play it out, is that you could see an unprecedented situation where the stock market is booming. The profits of the largest companies in the country are skyrocketing, but unemployment Unemployment is at 20%. Unemployment has never been higher, but the stock market is also peaking. When you have a world where there is such a separation, we know inequality creates social unrest. If you have a world where unemployment rates and the S&P 500 are peaking at the same time, that is a terrifying scenario. I don't care who you are, that is going to be a troubling scenario to live through, and the government needs to think about it. My perspective is that that single issue could be the single most important issue of the 2028 presidential election in the United States. I'm gonna call that right now. The second possible terrifying implication is a bad actor situation. As I've laid out, even if we naively assume all good, positive intent actors, the outcomes can be dire. So now imagine a more realistic world where there are bad actors. Well, now we have a situation where the likelihood of a dire outcome is even higher, especially when you overlay it with this loose regulatory climate where it's easier to access these technologies and to potentially hijack them in some way. All it takes is one bad actor armed with an increasingly powerful technology, breakthrough technology like AGI, or even something slightly less, to change the course of the entire world. I recently read a book called Nuclear War, A Scenario by Annie Jacobson that lays out a second-by-second, minute-by-minute account of what plays out from the moment the United States detects a nuclear first strike against its soil. It is a captivating, riveting, and terrifying book because it basically lays out a scenario where a few hours fundamentally ends human history because of how all of these protocols are in place. All it takes is one bad actor with access to a breakthrough technology to make a scenario like that become real. That, to me, is terrifying. That is an end game scenario, and I think we should be doing everything possible to prevent those kind of things from happening. Number 3 is a more personal thing. People can become more efficient and productive than ever before, but also lose a sense of texture, meaning, and purpose along the way. Now, as someone that considers themselves a creative or a creator, this is particularly apparent to me. There are all sorts of opportunities today to leverage AI to make my life easier in my creative work. But for me personally, the struggle of creating something is what creates the meaning and purpose in the first place. So becoming more efficient at doing it may make me better, I may make more money, I may be able to do more things. But if I lose my life and my purpose in the process, it is not actually a positive. In other words, it is possible to optimize the life out of your life. I think there is a world where AI becomes more and more of a part of our daily life. It optimizes all sorts of things, but in our ability to reduce the meaningful struggle that we have to take on in our day-to-day life, we actually reduce a whole lot of our meaning and purpose. That has dire implications for humanity. If you reach a world where you no longer need to work in any capacity, I do not think that is a good world. I could get into a debate with a lot of people about that. There are proponents of UBI, universal basic income, and all sorts of these things that say that we don't actually need to work. I disagree. I think that work is what provides a lot of texture and meaning to our lives. Productive, meaningful struggle creates a lot of value in our life, and I worry about what happens if AI removes the need to do that. Perhaps we find new meaningful struggle. Maybe someone who was previously needing to work can now do artistic endeavors or something that they find meaningful. But I think for most people, what would happen is they would end up sitting on the couch doing nothing, and it would reduce a whole lot of meaning, purpose, and happiness from their life. So that's something I'm paying attention to as well. And then the final terrifying risk, which I just feel the need to mention, is the idea that the genie escapes the proverbial bottle. All of the other things I've been talking about were really human interacting with AI in nature. This one is the scenario where we build a technology that is fundamentally more powerful than ourselves, and it decides that humans are the greatest threat to its long-term survival. This is sort of the iRobot scenario, if you will, a scenario where robots, or a Terminator scenario, if you will, where robots take over the world. I actually don't think it is that hard for me to paint a picture anymore where we create a sentient technology that decides we are the biggest risk to its survival and wants to destroy us. The counter argument I've heard, which I think is a fair one, is that humans control these data centers that are actually powering powering all the AGI and technology, and so we would just go shut it off. But I'm not really sure that's the case, that we truly control it. I mean, in the future, it's not hard to imagine that these data centers are being monitored by security systems and robots with access to AI. So if you actually go walk in and try to unplug it, as people say that you could, I think you may get stopped. Again, I think I've seen that in the Will Smith movie I, Robot. Not that difficult for me to paint a scenario where that happens, which is really scary to me. It sounds futuristic. I'm not a crazy futurist about these things, but it feels like a non-zero probability with an extraordinarily asymmetric risk profile that's worth us thinking about. So put all of that together, and my current belief is basically the following. Our shared commons, this society that we have built, cannot hold if the current incentive systems remain. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. In this case, you've seen the incentive and the outcome is not a good one. And to be clear, I am far from the only person that is voicing these concerns. In fact, Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, an AI company that is actually one of the builders of these transformative technologies, recently said the following, quote, "We as the producers of this technology have a duty and an obligation to be honest about what is coming. Cancer is cured, the economy grows at 10% a year, the budget is balanced, and 20% of people don't have jobs. You should be worried about where the technology we're building is going." End quote. We need a name for this darkly humorous irony where the people building the technology are the people saying someone should really do something about this. It's like someone standing out in front of a fire they just started, telling people that they should probably look into the fire. The general public is sounding the alarm as well. A recent Axios poll found that the majority of Americans across generations are feeling apprehensive about the pace of change and development. The share of Americans who say they want companies to take AI creation slowly to get it right the first time. Gen Z, 74%. Millennials, 63%. Gen X, 77%. Boomers, 91%. And across the entire population, 77%. To me, all of this is a function of time horizons. Humans are really bad, notoriously bad, at thinking long-term, both individually and collectively. We really struggle to think through second, third, nth order effects. We struggle to say, and then what, about any of these things that we're putting into place. The harsh truth is that everyone loves to say they're long-term until it's time to do long-term shit. That's just the truth. And long-term thinking in this case is the only way that I see to avoid this modern tragedy of the commons that I'm talking about. So as we consider the path forward, as we consider the way to avoid this end that we may envision coming, the simple question is the following. How can we lower the cost of long-term thinking? This means making it easier, more rewarding, or less risky for the actors in this tragedy to make decisions that benefit the long-term future of our commons, not just the short-term time horizon for themselves. This is not about stopping AI. It's not about how we regulate AI into paralysis. It's not about hating technological progress. As we've talked about, AI could be incredible, curing cancer, creating a whole ton of meaningful progress in these technological endeavors that we're driving forward. This is all about how we make it rational for each actor in our commons to act with the longer term future of our shared commons, of society itself in mind. It's about how we make it rational to work towards a future of human flourishing, rather than just a future where a few people get all of the benefits and the vast majority of society is significantly harmed. In my view, this is the only question that really matters when it comes to our future. How can we lower the cost of long-term thinking? I hope this video prompted you to think deeply about AI, the future that's being created, and about how you might envision us lowering the cost of long-term thinking. If it did, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I'd love for you to share this video with others so that we can continue to have this dialogue, a productive dialogue, I hope. I'm more than open to feedback, criticism, pushbacks, all of the above when it comes to these arguments. All I want is for the future, for humanity, for myself, for my family, to be the brightest, most brilliant one. And I hope that this is a productive video in driving towards that end. Thank you, and as always, stay curious, friends.